So welcome everybody. For any of you who don't know me, I'm Liz Davis and I'm the chairman of the Friends of St Neots Museum. Thank you very much for coming along this evening. As with any event or production nowadays, there is of course a little bit of health and safety. Please make sure that your mobile is switched off. Sorry, getting a bit of feedback here. Is that me? Shall I? Is that better? Okay, if you can all make sure your mobiles are on silent or switched off, that would be very helpful. There are toilets at the back of the church for any of you who need it. There's a gents on one side, ladies on the other. There's also a disabled loo. We're not expecting a fire to break out, touching wood. But there's fire exits at the front, the way you came in, but also at the back where the main doors to the church are. So the programme this evening is that the play's on first of all, then there's going to be an interval where drinks will be available at the back of the church. We're asking for a small donation for the drinks to help support this production. And after the interval, I'll be giving a short talk that lasts about half an hour about the setting in which Spencer Perceval committed the assassination and helping to illuminate further why he carried out this remarkable act. So thank you very much for coming, everyone. And there will also be questions, a question and answer session after my talk, if anybody's got any questions for me afterwards. So thank you very much, and that's the end of the intro, and let the play begin.
John fatherless at just 9 the trading port of Archangel. Upon his return to England 2 years later, he met and married Mary Neville. Mary herself was the daughter of a shipbroker and merchant from Dublin, so the two seemed well suited. Emboldened by his success, Bellingham established his own trading company in Liverpool the following year. John was an intelligent man. His business acumen and experience gained him contacts with merchants trading with Russia. This prompted him to return to Archangel in 1804, this time with his wife and a new baby boy in tow. Everything seemed to be going well. His principal dealings were with Dorbecker and Company. But within a year, a dispute arose between them, in which each party claimed that the other owed them money. The matter was referred to the Governor-General, who appointed arbitrators to deal with the accusations. They resolved that Bellingham was at fault and ordered that he pay Dorbecker the sum of 2,000 roubles. John refused to pay and appealed against the decision. Not only this, he tried to flee with the debt still unpaid. He obtained travel passes for him and his family to return to England. The long voyage would take them via the city of St. Petersburg. But before they could board the ship, John was arrested and detained in a debtor's prison. This left Mary and her young son all alone. Fortunately, they were at least allowed to go to St. Petersburg, where they waited for John.
My dearest wife, I hope you are both safe and well and have found comfortable accommodation in St. Petersburg. I hope to be with you soon when this business is resolved. For all you know, the debt that I was accused of owing was nothing to do with me, but was incurred by a business associate, and I continue to deny any responsibility for it. I feel that I have been unjustly treated and have no recourse to justice at present, but will try to rectify that. I am at present in a debtor's prison here in Archangel,
which is an awful place. I'm incarcerated in a rat-infested cell, being fed on bread and water. However, I feel there is more to this situation than meets the eye. I do not trust the Russians to allow me justice, as they think that I frustrated an insurance claim for their ship, the Solaire, which was lost in the White Sea. But I assure you, I did not. I feel that this whole situation is an act of revenge by the Russian merchants. When I was allowed pen and paper, I wrote to Lord Granville Levinson Gower, the British ambassador to Russia in St. Petersburg, to see if he will assist in obtaining my release. And then I can join you and take you home, my darling. Stay strong and pray for me. Eternally yours, John.
A reply eventually came from the British ambassador to Russia, Granville Levinson Gower.
For the intention of Mr. John Bellingham. Sir, further to your request for me to intercede on your behalf regarding the matter of an unpaid debt which you have been accused of incurring, I have contacted the British consul in Archangel, Sir Stephen Shaw, who has informed me that as it is a civil matter, he is unable to interfere. Therefore, I am unable to help you further. Lord Granville Levinson Gower, British Ambassador to Russia.
the Archangel jail for 9 long months until November 1805. He diligently and frequently wrote to Lord Gower and Sir Stephen Shaw. He pleaded with them to help secure his release.
The attention of Lord Brownlow Leveson Gower. Sir, I beg of you once more to intercede on my behalf and put in another place to the British Consulate or to anyone who may be able to help me. I need to secure the release from this hellhole of a prison. I rely on your goodwill in this matter, as I am unfairly incarcerated here and wish to be able to legally appeal against the charges that have been brought against me. Doing so would clear my name and would enable me to rejoin my family as a free man. Dratted man, John Bellingham. Letter after letter. Will he not be told?
Eventually, a new city governor for Archangel was appointed. He ordered John's release and allowed him to join Mary and their son in St. Petersburg. Unfortunately, John was stubborn. He keenly felt the sting of injustice and refused to let the matter settle. Therefore, he stayed and laid charges against the Archangel authorities for false imprisonment, and then demanded compensation in return. The Russian authorities were outraged. They immediately ordered his imprisonment in St. Petersburg, and now pregnant Mary and their son were forced to make the treacherous sea voyage back to Liverpool all on their own.
My dearest wife, I hope that you're all safe and well now that you're back home. I think of you and pray that I will be able to join you soon. The debtors' prison in Archangel was a palace compared to the hellhole in St. Petersburg. I keep being moved to different prisons for reasons that I cannot imagine, and that march through the city with gangs of felons and criminals of the worst description, to my heart-rending humiliation.
I'm occasionally allowed pen and paper, so where possible, I write to Lord Gower and to his successor, Lord Douglas, begging them for release and compensation. But I'm afraid that up till now, my entreaties have fallen on deaf ears. However, I will not stop until my case is dismissed, and I have been given my just dues. God bless and keep you. Eternally yours, John.
During all the years that he was in prison, John repeatedly sought help from the British consul and the British ambassador.
Sirs, without having offended any law, either civil or criminal, and without injuring any individual, I am bandied from one prison to another and incarcerated unfairly. I appeal to you to aid my case. I am desperate. Sincerely, John Bellingham.
But no help came. John spent 5 long years in prison. That is, until a petition was directly sent to Tsar Alexander of Russia. He ordered John's release in November 1809. Finally free, John did return to England. But freedom was not enough for him. He was still uncompensated and determined to secure justice. He now sought compensation from the British government for both his imprisonment in Russia and for the financial losses he'd accumulated during that time. Sending letter after letter, he wrote to anyone he thought could help him, but without success. In desperation,
a wrong which has beleaguered me for many years and has caused me much hardship, both financially and physically. I, an Englishman, have been unjustly imprisoned in Russia for nigh on 5 years. I seek compensation now that I have returned to my own country for the imprisonment and financial losses that I suffered whilst in these Russian prisons. I have made repeated requests for help from the Foreign Office, the Treasury, the Privy Council, and the Home Office, and even the Prince Regent, who referred me back to the Treasury. I hold British authorities to be responsible for my situation through their neglect of not addressing my repeated requests for help. Yours sincerely, John Bellingham.
No reply came from the Prime Minister. John had been repeatedly rejected at every turn. Taking advice from his friends, he decided to write to his local MP, in the hope that the MP would present his petition to the House of Commons, as our MPs still do for their constituents today. But John was to be thwarted once again when the Chancellor of the Exchequer refused to have anything to do with the matter. This prevented John's petition from ever reaching the House of Commons. John Bellingham spent 3 years in constant, unsuccessful battles with the government for compensation. Some might say a lesser man would have given up, but John still clung on to the hope that somehow his case would be heard. At this point, though, John had nowhere else to go. He wrote to the police magistrates at Bow Street, foreshadowing the tragedy to come.
To their worships, the police magistrates of the public office, Bow Street, London. Sirs, I much regret it being my lot to apply to your worships under the most unusual and peculiar circumstances. For the particulars of my case, I refer to the enclosed letter of Mr. Secretary Riley. I wrote to Mr. Perceval but received no reply, and I enclosed my petition to Parliament together with the printed papers herewith. The affair requires no further remark than that I consider His Majesty's government to have completely endeavoured to close the door of justice in declining to have or even permit my grievances to be brought before Parliament for redress, which is the privilege or the birthright of every individual. The purpose of this proposal is once more to solicit His Majesty's ministers through your medium, to let what is right and proper be done for me, which is all that I require. Should this reasonable request be finally denied, I should then feel justified in executing justice myself, in which case I shall be ready to argue the merits of so reluctant a measure with His Majesty's Attorney General, wherever and whenever I may be called upon to do so, in the hopes of diverting so abhorrent but compulsive an alternative. Your humble and obedient servant, John Bellingham.
This letter was immediately passed to members of the government, who took no notice of it. When John presented himself once more to the Treasury, he was told by a civil servant and Mr. Hill that nothing more could be done. He was further told that he might resort to whatever measures he saw fit. Mr. Hill could not have had any idea of the chain of events his words had set in motion. This seems to have been the final push that John needed to take justice into his own hands. He had made several visits to the Houses of Parliament over the preceding weeks. So when he appeared there again, on the 11th of May, no one thought it unusual. It was at this moment, however, that John Bellingham resorted to his final measure.
The Prime Minister is murdered!
Rather than escape onto the street, which would have been easy in the ongoing confusion, John Bellingham just sat down quietly and waited to be arrested.
Where is the murderer?
I am the unfortunate man.
Why have you murdered the Prime Minister?
I had exhausted all official avenues of redress and feel justified in my actions.
That same day, John Bellingham was committed to Newgate Prison. He was tried on Friday the 15th of May, 1812, at the Old Bailey. During the trial, John was persuaded to enter a plea of insanity in view of his family's history, but this was dismissed by the Governor-General. John thanked him for doing so and maintained that he was of sound mind at the time he shot Perceval. Throughout the proceedings, whilst all the witnesses gave their accounts, John sat calmly. When called upon by Lord Chief Justice Mansfield to say anything in his own defence, John simply requested that his papers, which had been taken from him at his arrest, be handed back. The judge agreed, and they were returned. He bowed respectfully to the court and the jury, and in a loud, confident voice began his account.
Gentlemen, this is the first time that I've ever spoken this way in public, so I hope that you'll make allowance for the lack of competence and take into account the substance rather than the manner of which I will attempt to explain to you the truth of this matter. I must assure the court that the crime that I have committed was motivated through compulsion, rather than any hostility towards Mr. Perceval personally. I shall now explain to you the set of circumstances which will justify everything that I have done and extenuate my actions. As the Attorney General has already said, my character has never before been impugned. Before this fatal catastrophe, I have always been highly esteemed by those that have known me. However, for the past 8 years, I have suffered every misery that human nature can endure, driven almost to despair by the inhumane treatment meted out to me in Russian prisons, which caused the breakdown of my spirit, my health, and the ruination of my body. All that kept me sane was the knowledge that I had committed no crime, and that my family was waiting for me. A family that had suffered too, through no fault of their own. All I have asked for repeatedly from His Majesty's government are my just dues for my false imprisonment in Russia, but I have received no satisfaction. On my return to England, I received a direct and final answer to my treatises from Mr. Reed at Bow Street Magistrates. He stated that he cannot interfere in my affairs. And then I was told personally by Mr. Hill, a civil servant at the Treasury, that I was at liberty to take such measures that I saw proper. This meant that I would get no satisfaction for my criminal detention in Russia from His Majesty's government. I therefore made my own decision. Who then is the more guilty? Those who acted without regard for honour and justice, or I, having given due notice of my intentions, then pursuing the only likely to offer an end to the injury and neglect which have brought me to the lowest edge of misery. Recollect, gentlemen, what was my situation. Recollect that my family was ruined and myself destroyed, merely because it was Mr. Perceval's pleasure that justice should not be granted. Sheltering himself behind the imagined security of his station, trampling on law and right, in the belief that no retribution could reach him. I demand only my right, not a favour. I demand what is the birthright and privilege of every Englishman. When a minister sets himself above the law, as Mr. Perceval did, he does it at his own personal risk. If it were not so, the mere will of a minister would become the law. And what then of democracy and your liberties? I trust that this serious lesson will act as a warning to all future ministers who will henceforth do the thing that is right. For if the upper ranks of society are allowed to act wrongly with impunity, then the inferior ramifications will soon become wholly corrupted. My life, gentlemen, is in your hands. I rely confidently in your justice.
After the Lord Chief Justice had finished summing up, the jury retired to consider the evidence. It took them just 15 minutes to return their verdict. Guilty. Bellingham's face showed surprise, but no concern when he heard the verdict. The judge then passed sentence.
This crime is as odious and abominable in the eyes of God as it is hateful and abhorrent to the feelings of man. There now remains a very short time for you to seek for mercy in another world. You shall be hanged by the neck until you be dead, your body to be dissected and anatomized.
The entire trial lasted less than 8 hours. His execution was ordered for the following Monday, the 18th of May, 1812, at Newgate. He received his sentence without showing any emotion. During his final 3 days in prison, John received word from his jailer that 2 men from Liverpool had called. They sent word that his wife and family would be taken care of. The night before his hanging, he asked for a pen and paper and wrote a last letter to his wife.
My dearest Mary, it rejoiced me beyond measure to hear that you will be well provided for, and I am sure that the public at large will also participate in this. I assure you, my love, that my sincerest endeavours have ever been directed to your welfare. As we shall not meet any more in this world, I sincerely hope that we will do so in the world to come. My blessings to the boys.
With the purest intentions, it has always been my misfortune to be thwarted, misrepresented, and ill-used in life. But, however, I feel the happy prospect of compensation in life eternal. It is not possible to feel more calm and placid than I feel. 9 hours more will waft me to those happy shores where bliss is waiting. Yours ever affectionately, John.
John seemed calm, cheerful, and confident, looking around him as he took his final steps and climbed the stair. Dr. Ford asked if he wished to say anything, and John did start to talk about Russia and his family, but Dr. Ford interrupted and began to pray, and John enthusiastically joined in. While the cap was being tied around his face, some of the many onlookers cried out. The hoarse murmur of the crowd arose into a loud buzz of excited expectation, the multitude of voices swelling into a roar. Then the cry went up.
Hats off! Hats off!
The noise subsided, and a respectful silence ensued. The clock struck 8. In 2009, Neots Local History Society erected a plaque on Bellingham House on the corner of Cambridge Street and Huntingdon Street, the birthplace of John Bellingham. To this day, Bellingham's skull remains preserved in the Pathology Museum at St Bartholomew's Hospital in London. John Bellingham is the only man to have ever assassinated a British Prime Minister.